a mahogany box sealed with brass, 12 years of letters hidden beneath floorboards, and a child, a boy with his father's eyes, that Martha never knew existed. That Saturday morning had begun like any other, with rain hammering against the suburban house and Martha's hands already trembling before Elena even suggested they clean the attic. The dust rose in pillars. Elena pulled a moth-eaten wool blanket from a stack of cardboard boxes marked "Kitchen" in faded black marker, and the fibers came apart in her hands like the wings of dead insects. The attic was half light and half shadow. A single 60-watt bulb casting its harsh cone across the floorboards. Dust motes spun through it like tiny galaxies. She sneezed, her back arching, sneakers slipping on the grit that had accumulated over decades. Heavy rain drummed on the shingles directly overhead. Rhythmic, relentless. Martha sat on a low wooden stool, her hands gripping her knees. The wedding ring on her left hand was worn so thin, it looked like it might slip off at any moment. She winced, shifting her weight from a sore hip, her face a map of small agonies. She pointed a trembling finger at the corner floorboards where the shadows pooled deepest. Elena dragged a rusted trunk across the floor. Metal screamed against wood, a high, piercing shriek that made both of them freeze. She paused, wiping sweat from her forehead with a grimy sleeve, leaving a streak of gray soot across her brow like a bruise. The trunk had carved deep gouges into the attic dust, exposing the raw wood beneath. Then her foot caught a loose floorboard. Elena stumbled, her right hand flying out to catch herself on a stack of newspapers. New York Times from 1994, brittle and yellowed. The floorboard under her heel popped up with a sudden crack that echoed through the attic space. An inch of gap, darkness beneath. Elena kneeled, her fingers prying at the loose board. Splinters bit into her skin. She reached into the dark cavity, her arm disappearing up to the elbow, her face twisted in concentration, teeth gritted. Muted scratching of fingernails on wood. Cobwebs clung to her sleeve, then contact. She heaved a small, heavy box out of the hole. Mahogany, bound with brass, secured with a sturdy padlock. Gray insulation fluff clung to its lid like wet snow. The box thudded against the solid floorboards. Martha leaned forward. The stool nearly tipped, her eyes fixated on the mahogany surface. She reached out, her hand hovering inches from the lid, trembling so violently the air seemed to shimmer around her fingers. Her face drained of color, becoming a mask of pale parchment, white as the insulation clinging to the brass. Martha's whisper was barely audible. "I thought he threw this away. He promised." Elena gripped the box under her arm, turning toward the steep attic stairs. Martha lunged from her stool. Her fingernails dug into Elena's bicep through her t-shirt, leaving indentations in the gray fabric. The scuffle was sudden and violent, shoes scraping against wood, Martha's grunt of exertion. Elena pulled back, but Martha didn't let go. They wrestled near the edge of the stairwell, the darkness of the lower floors yawning beneath them. Elena's heel slipped on the top step, a moment of zero gravity, her stomach hollowing, and she slammed her free hand onto the railing to stay upright. Loud bang. The wood groaned. Martha's foot kicked a pile of old magazines. They slid like ice beneath her, and she fell to her knees. But she didn't let go of the box. Her knuckles turned white as she pulled it toward her chest, gasping for air, dust rising from the impact in a small cloud. Elena pried Martha's fingers off one by one. She wrenched the box away. She stood over her mother, who was slumped on the floor, breathing hard. Elena's chest heaved. The shadow she cast across Martha's body was absolute. The kitchen was bright and cold. Elena slammed the tip of a flathead screwdriver into the gap between the box and the padlock hasp. She gripped a heavy rubber-handled hammer in her right hand, arm cocked back, ready. Rain beat against the window. The light outside was gray and oppressive. Elena struck the screwdriver with a hammer. Clang! A spark flew. The brass hasp bent but held. She struck again, harder. Metal shards and wood splinters sprayed across the white laminate countertop like shrapnel. She could feel the vibration in her arm, the shock traveling up her shoulder. Clang! With a final, desperate heave, the lock snapped. The hasp flew across the room and hit the refrigerator with a metallic ting. Elena dropped the tools. They clattered onto the floor. She slowly lifted the lid. The hinges creaked. Inside, bundles of paper. Elena pulled out a stack of envelopes bound by a red rubber band. The band snapped. Letters spilled across the table like a cascade of evidence. All addressed to her father, Robert, in a flowing, feminine script. Blue envelopes, white envelopes, postmarks spanning from 2008 to 2020. 12 years. Martha picked up a single Polaroid. The photo showed Robert on a beach, his arm around a blonde woman who wasn't Martha. A toddler sat at their feet, building a sandcastle with a bright yellow pail. The back was dated August 2014. Martha stared at the image without blinking. Her eyes began to well with tears. The rain was relentless outside. Elena opened a letter. The text was visible. Robert, he asked about you again today. He has your eyes. Elena's grip tightened, crumpling the edge of the stationery. The ink smudged under her thumb. She couldn't breathe. There was a heartbeat thumping in her ears so loud it drowned out everything else. The back door slammed open. Robert entered, shaking a wet black umbrella. Water droplets scattered across the tile floor. He stopped dead. His eyes found the mahogany box on the table, its contents laid bare like an autopsy. His shoulders tensed. His face paled. He lunged for the table. His hand swept across the surface, gathering the letters, the photographs, trying to contain the catastrophe. Elena blocked him. He shoved her hard, his shoulders slamming into her chest, sending her stumbling back into the counter. Oof! The wind knocked out of her. Martha stood up. Her chair screeched backward and fell over. She grabbed a heavy ceramic pitcher from the table and slammed it down inches from Robert's hand. The pitcher exploded. White shards sprayed across the letters, and some of them turned pink as the red wine mixed with blood. Whose blood? It wasn't clear. Robert flinched. His hand pulled back. Saturday evening, 7 o'clock. The dining room was arranged with terrible formality. David, 19, sat with his silverware arranged exactly as it should be. His eyes darted between his parents. He gripped his silver fork so tightly, his knuckles were white. There should have been a centerpiece in the middle of the table. Flowers, candles, something. But the space was empty. Just bare oak and the reflection of the chandelier in his water glass. Robert tried to cut a piece of roast beef. The knife screeched against the china plate. High-pitched, unbearable. He couldn't get a clean cut. The meat slid around under the blade. He looked up. Sweat beaded on his upper lip. His eyes were too bright, too frantic. He was a man trying to maintain normalcy while sitting on a wire that was about to snap. Martha reached into her lap. She pulled out the 2014 Polaroid. The boy, the beach, the blonde woman, all of it. She slid it across the table. It spun like a top, coming to a stop directly in front of Robert's plate, right next to his untouched roast beef. Martha's voice was glaciated, low. Who is the boy, Robert? Robert grabbed his wine glass and hurled it against the wall. Red wine exploded like blood across the wallpaper, leaving arterial patterns that would never quite wash out. He stood up so fast, he flipped the table forward. The entire surface tilted toward the children, plates, gravy, glass, all of it sliding like an avalanche. David jumped back as hot gravy splashed his lap. He grabbed Robert's wrist, trying to stop him from reaching for Martha. Robert backhanded him, a wet, fleshy smack. David's head snapped sideways. His back hit the sideboard with a heavy thud. A red mark bloomed on his cheek, perfect in its symmetry, perfect in its cruelty. Elena stood amidst the wreckage. Ruined dinner, broken glass, two strangers mid-war. She looked at her parents. They seemed to be occupying different dimensions now, separated by an ocean of red wine and shattered ceramics. She grabbed David by the shoulder and pulled him toward the door. Her face was hollow, emptied of everything except the singular purpose of escape. The howling wind from the front door was already calling them out into the night. Elena slammed the heavy oak front door. The sound echoed through the house like a gunshot. The frame shook. The brass knocker rattled. Outside, the rain swallowed them instantly, cold and absolute, erasing them from the world of that house in seconds. Late Saturday night, silence. Martha picked up a single porcelain shard from the rug. She held it to the light. It was stained with red wine, a dark, dried bloom. She looked at Robert, who was sitting on the floor with his head in his hands. The steady drip of water from a leak in the ceiling marked time. Drip, drip, drip. Robert looked up. His eyes were bloodshot. He reached out a hand toward Martha. She stepped back. Her expression didn't change. She pointed toward the door with the shard still in her hand. Robert stood, grabbed his wet trench coat from the chair, walked out the back door without looking back. The latch clicked shut, a soft, final sound. The kitchen clock ticked. 11:45 p.m. Sunday morning, pale light through the windows. Martha sat on the edge of her bed. The mahogany box was in her lap. She placed the letters back inside, one by one, smoothing the crumpled edges with her thumb. The rustling of paper was the only sound. Her wedding ring caught a ray of light as her hand moved. She worked with meticulous precision, as if she were performing surgery on a corpse. She closed the lid. Thud. She opened her nightstand drawer. Inside were lavender sachets and a leather-bound Bible. She pushed them aside to make room for the box. She slid it in and closed the drawer. The wooden slide was smooth and final. Martha turned the key in the drawer lock, a small silver key. She took it and dropped it into a glass of water on the nightstand. It sank to the bottom, a tiny plink as it landed on the glass. The key refracted through the water, distorted and no longer accessible. Sunday morning light. The house was breathing quietly, as if it too needed to recover. The morning sun hit the dining room floor. There was a faint, pale circle on the wood where the table used to be. The rug had a dark, damp patch that wouldn't go away. The stain had set into the fibers like a permanent scar. The wallpaper where the wine had splattered was trying to fade, but the marks were stubborn. Total silence, save for a distant bird. Martha walked past the hallway mirror. She didn't look at her reflection. She reached out and adjusted a crooked picture frame. A family photo from 10 years ago. Young Robert, young Martha, a different world. Her hand lingered on the glass, leaving a faint, foggy print from her fingertips. The frame made a soft clink against the wall as she positioned it. The foggy print began to evaporate slowly, disappearing back into the air. She sat in the armchair by the window. She picked up a book. She didn't open it. She just stared out at the rain-washed suburban street, her face as still as stone. In the background, on the wall, the shadow of the staircase looked like a cage. The gray sky was unchanging. The neighborhood was quiet. Tick, tick, tick. The clock on the mantel kept its relentless rhythm.